Good morning, my name is Alan Mayer and I'm enjoying leading us through 365 days of Bible study. We are looking at the moment at the statutes and laws of Old Israel, and particularly at this particular time, the laws relating to human behaviour towards other humans. Today we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 1 to 3, and laws against excessive mourning and an introduction to Jewish food laws. You belong to Yahweh your God. When you are mourning someone's death, you are no longer to cut your skin or to shave the front half of your head as pagans do. You belong to Yahweh your God. He chose you to be his personal possession from amongst all who live on the earth. Do not eat anything that Yahweh has declared unclean. Funeral customs are amazingly resilient, even in our own godless culture. The wearing of dark clothing, the procession to the funeral, the eulogy, sending the departed to their rest. As we saw back on day 127, Deuteronomy was not just a book on a shelf, it was a preached text, a book of homilies. And here in these verses, the preaching begins by telling people to stop some of the bad funeral habits they had picked up from their neighbours. It's hard to tell whether the bad practices mentioned here, scarification and head shaving, had been picked up early from the Canaanites or later from Babylon. Disfigurement, whether permanent in the form of scarification or temporary, as in the shaving of the head, was a sign of personal distress and sometimes a sign of solidarity with the departed. Notice that nothing is said about why these practices are wrong. They just are, because they are not Jewish. This tasteful adjustment to funeral practices is followed by half a chapter about foods that may or may not be eaten. If you'd like to read them, they're in chapter 14, verses 3 to 21, prohibiting the eating of pork, crabs and lobsters, birds that hunt, flying insects, animals that have died of natural causes, and oddly, lamb cooked with milk. The grounds for these prohibitions once again are not stated, so we can only guess now why Jews and Muslims after them can't eat bacon sandwiches, although it remains pretty obvious why you wouldn't eat a bee or a wasp, and in the absence of refrigeration, why seafood and pork might be dodgy, even though people in other cultures at the time seem not to have come to too much harm. The self-mutilation at funerals did not last long, but the food laws persist amongst Jews and Muslims to this day. Among Christians, it took a special revelation to Peter the Apostle, Acts chapter 10, verse 13, to declare all foods clean. And that was the end of ritual food regulations for us. Now, there have always been Christians who prefer not to eat the flesh of once living creatures, and St. Paul allowed for that in his comments about Christian diversity. You can read that in Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. Tomorrow, we come to a big cultural rift. Slavery. Slavery was common in the ancient world, and it too was regulated by Old Testament law. And I'll see you tomorrow. We'll look at that.